To set the scene, it must be remembered that ultimately, even though the personal, isolated from its real awareness connection self, would consider itself separate from all other body forms, in reality, as everything is, so it is this everything isness reality that is through all created consciousness in all simulators, and the body forms and multi-dimensional life levels thus effected from the construct of consciousness. We each are, in reality, this real awareness animating the body forms. This real awareness is this isness a true reality, and so every real awareness is a part of this true reality everything. But as the secondary personal self is created, as the free will use of the mechanics of the body forms are utilized, that give rise to this secondary personal self, so the real awareness is disconnected from, and as lifetimes go past, as individuals remain in this personal self-awareness position, so is forgotten the real awareness, isness everything that we actually are, and from that perspective, the personal self, as I said, it deals with the ideas, the pieces, it sees separateness and differentiation, as after all, this is how a simulation presents itself as, designed this way as an overall comparison, encapsulated pieces or ideas that are for the purpose of recognizing the wholeness of the is by the comparison they provide. And onto the real side then, as we re-establish our real awareness standing, as this real awareness is as all real awareness will be, this overall isness reality, so it is that the real awareness isness everything that is through all consciousness, as it effects into the endless expression of a simulation and body form, can show any personal created self anything of any consciousness that is effecting into a simulation if it makes sense to do so, as after all, the real awareness is all about itself, as it is everything, so what else could it or would it be about? And the is all about the endless recognition of itself, made so through the various real awareness units or aspects of itself, that on recognizing the they are a part of, so this becomes greater recognition that the has of itself, and so the expression making sense in regards to what the personal self is shown would be that which facilitates the real awareness's recognition of the through the experiences afforded the personal self. The personal self then is used as a tool to this end, to generate experience, and this experience then is the comparison by which the can be recognized, and endless viewpoints and ideas will be presented to the personal self, as much as is required for the real awareness's sole objective is recognition. What I would be shown then on the real side was a past lifetime, but a past lifetime that my real awareness impressions revealed was not my own. But then, as I said, if it is this one overall isness everything, animating through all consciousness, all body forms and lifetimes, in reality, every lifetime is everybody's experience, as we are all this one isness reality. But we can say that certain lifetimes were experienced by a particular isness animated consciousness, and so it would be in this situation a lifetime not experienced by my consciousness affected body forms. I would have the view then from my real awareness position, so not directly participating in the experience, of just observing an individual who had developed a very abrasive consciousness indeed, as we do design the consciousness however we decide, our attitudes, intents, proclivities, and make our life choices and decisions accordingly. A very abusive individual was he, but one with a certain lofty position in society that allowed for his abuse to be somewhat dismissed, swept under the carpet, as is often the case with individuals who operate in the higher echelons of society. The setting seemed to be the earth, the era difficult to determine, though I would have placed it in perhaps the late 1800s, early 1900s, for the individual in question possessed an array of very large stately homes, and they certainly had rather an 1800s look to their design, and the decor within suggested likewise. His indiscretions were numerous, and somewhat escalating in their severity, and eventually a certain line was crossed where he would actually kill an individual who he considered a friend. For a group of his associates and himself would be passing a little time on the grounds of one of his stately homes. There was an altercation, and he would strike one of the individuals with the back of his hand. This resulted in the unfortunate wretch falling to the ground, his head making a distinct cracking sound as it impacted the stony surface of where they were standing. The man's skull was broken, a large puddle of blood pooling under his head. As the others of the group attended to him, they would declare shortly thereafter that he was dead. The perpetrator, the man that this experience view was centered on, was very indifferent to what he had just done, for he knew that although it was a step beyond that which he normally indulged in and got away with, this then would be a little different. A cover-up would be ensured, due to his wealth, status, and influence. His wife, however, wasn't very enthralled with the whole situation, as news of it would reach her ears, and she would proclaim her desire to divorce this man. But it was as though, as I said, a line had been crossed, one he could never step back across from, and his rage at his wife's impudence, for even daring to suggest such a thing, would have her suffer the same fate as the man's associate, with a similar cover-up that followed, allowing the man to evade any kind of justice. A very smug individual he would be, as he considered how glorious it was that he could murder with impunity. The design of creation, however, is such that everything we do, everything we decide, all the ideas we create and agree with, carry the corresponding effects, and the nature of the ideas will effect equally in the simulation and experience we walk into. In a sense, then, justice as an idea is delivered through the very structure of a cause and effect creation. Abrasive acts carry abrasive effects, or karma, and those we embroil ourselves with, those we have made karmic entangled connections with, as the body forms are simulation effected from ideas of the consciousness, so it is that ideas agreed to we experience, then these ideas that are the body forms effected ensures that we always will encounter certain individuals lifetime after lifetime. Indeed, every individual we have at some point agreed with is then an idea locked into the consciousness, that potentially we can always encounter them again, as no agreement with any individual is released until the facing of the self as a process, the releasing of the consciousness and all its ideas, including affiliations with others, is undertaken. As such, this individual would eventually transition, and his design of a consciousness would effect for him a new position, but interestingly, not one of a great wealth and property, but a lifetime more so that of a peasant. For in fact, from an earth position, more western globe speaking, to a position more so now in the east, and he would be a farmer, his features oriental in appearance, suggesting that very likely he now was a Chinese, and the era would be around the 1950s, I would estimate. The wife he had previously murdered in his last lifetime was his wife once again in this lifetime, and although she didn't understand it, she harboured a great resentment for her husband, as of course, even though unconscious of previous lifetime experiences in this lifetime, with a new memory body, all experiences, all lifetimes are stored as idea files subconsciously, and this resentment and bitterness would be seeping from her subconscious, the stored file of her murder. Additionally, the individual, the associate, the man had killed, also would feature in this new lifetime. As I said, groups of individuals with their karma interwoven, as they hold to the ideas that the body forms represent. This other individual would now be featuring as the man's son, but it was as though he harboured no ill will or anger toward his father, unlike his mother. As different individuals will apply different emotion to the experiences they have, and not all will necessarily apply anger, hate, and the compulsion for revenge, even in situations where they are murdered. And so the subconscious file of the murder event will not always be tinged with anger that manifests as a future lifetime compulsion to want to in some way get even with an individual. Interestingly, the karma, the effects the main character of this experience, had brought upon himself through that which he had previously done and decided, would be along the lines of his farm to have manifest on its lands a kind of a portal, and through this portal would pour demonic and entity-like creatures, whose singular objective was to seize this man and drag him back to whence they came from, likely some spot in the lower astral. Interesting then how we open ourselves up to all kinds of situations unknowingly through that which we decide, and we may consider the unfairness of it all, but with everything the effect of precisely what we decide, and how we design our simulating affecting a consciousness. Nothing can happen in our experience beyond our decision for it to be. Everything in creation is based on agreement, and this man had somehow effected for himself the experience of the very gates of the lower astral opening on his land, and additionally he knew these demons, entities, were coming, a kind of intuitive insight on his part, and so was preparing as best as a man of his now limited means was able, by constructing rudimentary weapons, spears, bows, and arrows, and not only would he become very adept at the bow, but would teach his son to be equally so, as his wife continued to fume and wallow in her, what would seem to her, illogical anger at her husband, who on the surface and in the current lifetime now seemed a thoroughly decent man.
That was fun, Kevin. Yes, I had a couple, Steve and Janice Hardy, in my class for almost 20 years when I lived in Huntington Beach with my former wife, and they had went through something similar in the past lifetime. She had killed him, so in this lifetime, he would really give her a bad time, even sometimes beat her. When they were younger, they met in high school. And so then he discovered that, yeah, that's what happened. And even then, it was hard for him to get through the emotional part. But yeah, it's very interesting. They're very aware individuals. But at the same time, yes, they had went through this, and this was part of their makeup. And again, the best way to deal with any of this is to face it head on. Just face it head on. But when you're not aware of what's going on or what's agitating you or what have you, it's rather difficult because you cannot identify it. And so you can schmooze it over with ideas, cute ideas, whatever, but it's still there. And it's still within the individual, and it shows up at some particular time. So there was a company called Schick that did non-smoking treatments, which were electrical shocks and whatever. That was probably in the 70s, I'm guessing. I remember that, and they would advertise it on TV. And so it would set up I could see that what it did is it just set up a different idea to where if you touch the cigarette, you'd have another automatic emotional reaction to the cigarette, but the original desire was still there. And so the mind and all that's very, very interesting. So this is where, yes, it takes a lot. And people don't realize it. They think they can just join some spiritual path or something and learn things and voila. But no, there's a lot more going on within ourselves that the conscious mind does not see with all these bodies and what we're agreeing to with our intent that does not even know about the isness and the real universes and how this is. And so need that relationship to eventually dissolve all this to, get past, overcome, and, move in a better position from these things that we've learned in creation. But at the same time, just like you're saying in the experience where he taught himself and his son to defend themselves while the wife was doing whatever, grinding her teeth. Everybody's going through experience, and that experience adds up. So it's different ways to defend themselves, and also, seeing this taking place, so better adjusting as they go along. But yeah, it's all experience. But yeah, that's very, very good because this is what is going on with a lot of people, and they go to psychologists and whatever. Well, the psychologists, they can tell stories and they can give you ideas and advice and, be nice, love your neighbor or whatever. And that's all cool. Or take medication. Many times they'll prescribe medication, but that just masks it. That the reality of it is still there because it's part of the individual that he cannot recognize. They cannot recognize. And so this is a huge, huge psychology, you might say, but more so than that, psychology is very limited with what we're doing. It's learning to see what's going on. It's becoming aware. And so these are good little points that you bring up. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's good.